It's time for another one of those Wednesday rides. This week we're going counterclockwise down the Rhine to Bad Hönningen, then up into the mountains to the Wied Valley, up the Wied River, and all the way past Neustadt to Monastery Ehrenstein and Castle Ruin, then back into the mountains as you see here, and down along the Sieg River back to Bonn. And all of that with full narration by myself. I'm the only rider today, so I'm the only person you will see in this video, so I'll tell you a bit more about the area we're going through. Leaving Bonn now, we pass by the former government quarter, which now is a business and office quarter, United Nations there, and this big building there is the Post Tower, the Deutsche Post DHL headquarters, a landmark building, beautiful architecture. I wish we had more of that. This is the first climb of the day, so to say, up a little pedestrian and bike bridge over the Autobahn in the Rheinaue urban park. It's going to be a somewhat more longish video. See the Post Tower back there? A longish video because I have the time. It's almost an hour long. I'm on my own. And I will use this to explain a little bit more also about the sections that I ride a lot. Here we're crossing the southern of the three bridges of Bonn. On the other side of the Rhine, beautiful, the seven mountains over there in the bright sunshine. It's a gorgeous day, not a cloud in the sky, and crispy cold, I should say. It's going to warm up in the course of the ride to about 10 degrees, but right now it is, I think it's pretty chilly still. Okay, the first, I'd say 30, maybe 40 kilometers is, of this 125 kilometer ride, is along the River Rhine. Going upstream, that is going south, past the seven mountains that you can still see ahead of us because they are located south of Bonn. As you see here, I'm mostly riding trails. There will be sections of road later on, but this is actually not bad to ride on, at least if and when you know your way. Because then you know where the road is good, where the trail is good, where the bumpy sections are, where to put in some more power and where not. This helps greatly in a velomobile. Now here at this point the trail gets very narrow and curvy, so I leave the trail and go for the road, which essentially runs parallel. It runs through the villages along the Rhine, whereas the trail sort of runs by the river, and which makes it somewhat easier to ride because there's no intersections, no traffic lights, but it's not that bad here at all. So leaving Niederdollendorf now, this is the next town, Königswinter. I'm going back to the Rhine, but not to the trail, which is to the right of this road here. There, the city officials don't want cyclists. They rather have pedestrians, so they have created all sorts of obstacles for cyclists not to go there. And here I stop for this old lady. Yes, that's my good deed for the day. And on we go past this city center of Königswinter, which is one of our usual meeting points. Now, along that road, we're passing the landmarks of the seven mountains. The best known is the Dragon's Rock, which this is in front of you. Yeah, that's Dragon's Rock, and on top of that is Dragon's Rock, the old fort. There's also a Dragon's Rock castle, a 19th century castle in the neo-Gothic style, I say it is. And you see the trails here are designed to slow the cyclists down, or maybe not, because most cyclists that were meant to ride here are slow anyway, and they may rather appreciate that the riding is not just straight. Okay, at this point here in Bad Honnef, I have to depart from my usual way, which would be going straight under those bars there. But since I have the camera mounted on the hump, I won't fit. So I have to go around it, and I sure hope that I will always remember to go around it when the camera is mounted, or else I will smash the camera. Pretty soon we'll be leaving Bad Honnef and heading for the next town on a bit of road, then taking a small side road which is not really open for through traffic. Extremely bumpy, I have to say, in this first section. Going by one of those old villas and estates that you will find a lot on the banks of the Rhine. I'm not talking about the new buildings there, but the old one, which is behind those trees there. You can just see a little bit of that. It's a mansion with a huge park. Plenty of wealthy people used to live here, and plenty also of hospitals or sanatoriums used to be here, because this was considered a spa place. I don't know what was really spa-worthy about it, except that the air was not as polluted as it was in the not too far away industrial areas on the Rhine and Ruhr rivers. You see, these are those roads now heading towards the town of Unkel. A side road, which is a service road to the wastewater management facility in our back, but it's not open to public traffic, so it's very good to ride by bicycle. Okay, beyond Unkel, I'm leaving the trails because they are unrideable for a good bike, a fast bike, and take to the Federal Road 42, which takes me along the next town. On the other side is Remagen, the town of Remagen, you see there across the river. And on this side of the river, we have the village of Erpel, which is a pretty nice village, but they have terrible cobblestone on their main street, so I avoid to go through that town. I ride by the river. I know the village well, so I'm perfectly fine riding by the river, and I would recommend to you to do the same. Now, this is already the next town. This is Linz, somewhat larger town, more important. Is located on the river, but also up the mountain, and you got some pretty steep climbs there. Here I'm taking the old B42, the new road you see on the other side of the railroad tracks. Passing a cyclist here. Yes, this is the Velomobile difference, you see that. But the old B42 nowadays is not a through road, so there's very little traffic, and it's still good enough to ride. As you see, there's quite some traffic on the new B42, so I'm happy that there is the old one for me to ride on. Now let's take another look across the river. It's not that you can see it very clearly, but you see the kind of dent in the chain of mountains there. That's the Ahr River Valley that ends here. The Ahr mouths into the Rhine here. So if I had wanted to go there, I would have taken the ferry at Linz and cross over to the other side to enter the Ahr Valley. At the next village, a couple of sharp turns which slow me down. That's normal, that cannot be avoided with trail riding, and you have those corners where people come your way trying to cut the corner. But we both managed, so everything's fine. So here's my turn now to cut the corner, and again everything's fine. Eventually, the old B42 degenerates into a bike and footpath. Not quite as good to ride, but still okay. You see on the track in the center there that we're almost down at the southernmost point. That's when we are going to leave the river. So Bad Hönningen, which is the place where we are leaving the river, is not far. And to the next village, people here are waiting for the railroad crossing to open. I'm turning left and going through the rather bumpy main road of this little sleeper village here, which is a paved road and no tarmac. So we're almost there. This is the outskirts of Bad Hönningen. I'm not going into town, I'm staying on the margins of town. The only reason for me to show you this is to show you one of those remarkable buildings that you see standing around here everywhere, even though those suburbs that you pass through could be anywhere. So it's all the same, but you see that building there, that's something special, that castle. It could also be a monastery. Now, passing the main road, which would lead you back to Bonn if you had come by car, I'm taking the road out of town to the east. And as you can see from the layout of the terrain here, this must also have been a river valley at some point, with a rather big river flowing out of the mountain. Today all I could discover is a very small creek, but it has created this valley, and that is of course the opportunity to climb the mountains in the most decent way, with a very gentle 1 to maybe 5% climb for the most part, and then towards the end of that valley you will have to climb the next ridge, and that will be in the 10 to 12%. But these roads are the best ways to cross the mountains, and that's why most people take them, because traditionally, when horsepower was still very valuable, people had chosen to place those roads in the most suitable places possible. And as you can see for yourself, the valley is rather nice, is quiet, pretty, not much traffic at all, and so it's a joy to ride. You see here, lots of countryside, no buildings proliferating up the valley, as is the case in so many other valleys that leave towns. You see, I'm pointing here towards the layout. We're approaching the end of the valley. And there will be 2 switchbacks to take us up the ridge, and here's now the first of the 2. let's say up to 13% around those turns, and then it is a little bit better. This is the second switchback. Very nice, very good to ride. This is a state road, not a county road, even though it has traffic like it was a county road. But being a state road, it gets a better service than those county roads because the state has more money than most of the counties here in the rural areas. When we entered Bad Hönningen, down by the river, we were at 60 meters above sea level. Now we're at 252, and we'll be close to 300 by the time we get up to the top. And here we are at the top, best place to answer a call, because there's this bus stop where I could pull in.
Ja gut, passt auch heute Abend. Ja, passt heute Abend. Ich bin bis heute Nachmittag, so um 4 bin ich unterwegs und dann muss ich sehen, dass ich für heute Abend noch was besorge. Das kriege ich hin. Ja, okay. Wie viel Uhr willst du denn kommen? Wann kannst du denn?
A friend of mine calling, trying to reschedule a meeting.
Ja, 6:30 ist gut. Okay, bis dann. Ciao.
And from here on, my troubles begin, because this is now supposed to be a good downhill, and I had chosen a particular side road on this. And you see there, this barricade. I was supposed to turn off there, but I didn't even recognize this as a road because it's totally blocked off. So I continued, and then noticed, no, I'm not right. I could see on my Garmin that I was getting off the track. So I knew I would have to pedal up the downhill that I'm on right now, which is a 10% uphill then. So I went back up to have another look, and I even stopped at the truck and asked the guys working there whether this was just this section or the roadworks would continue, and they said, no, you can't ride, it's all the way. So I decided to take the main road and went down that mountain again, this time considering to turn off at some point and maybe reconnect to that original route in order to really take that more scenic approach to the Veit River Valley. Well, this isn't bad, to be sure. It's a good road to ride on, but I had wanted a smaller one, a side road, a little bit of up and down, instead of just taking the main road, even though the main road doesn't have any traffic, which is one of the major reasons for not wanting to be on main roads. And it's all downhill, as you can see. Of the 300 meters where we were at, eventually we will go down to about 100 meters, which is the Veit River Valley floor. You see me hesitating a little bit because there's now a turnoff coming up in a little while, and I am still thinking about taking that one, and I have to confess to you, I actually did, but pretty soon I found out that it wouldn't be the best option, so I returned to the main road and followed it, and just kept on going. Here, that's the spot. That's where I turned off and then realized I would have to go back up the mountain, not knowing. You see the deviation sign there on the right? Not knowing whether the road I would reconnect to would be rideable. So made no sense, so I stayed on the road, as I told you before. In contrast to the quietness of the valley on the other side of the mountain, this side, you see, has a lot of settlements all the way up the mountain. They're very different. The Veit River Valley at this point has still plenty of people, has a number of small towns and villages, and I think also many medical or rehab institutions, because for some reason this area was considered to be a favorable place. Don't ask me, I don't know why that would be the case, other than that the price level would be much more attractive than in the urban areas. For whatever reason, so this side of the mountain is very different from the other side of the mountain, even though the other side of the mountain comes up the Rhine River Valley, which is the much more populated area compared to the Veit River Valley in general. See, now we're just crossing here the Veit River at 106 meters, and we're now turning left to follow the road that leads up the river. And outside of the towns, we have left Waldbreitbach. Outside of those towns, there's a lot of open countryside with no settlements at all, except for the occasional village every, I'd say, 8 or so kilometers, 7 to 8 kilometers. Typically, for these Westerwald river valleys, is the mountains to the left and right tend to go up rather steeply, so there's no farming possible there. So it's all forest, and sometimes the valley is too small for any additional farming. But sometimes it widens up a little bit, and there's a little bit of farming, some pastures mostly. Which I think is part of the attraction of this valley, that it doesn't lend itself easily to any commercial purpose. I'll show you a bit more, some longer clips from this valley ride, because it is indeed rather pretty. The road is not good in many places, pretty bumpy. And pretty narrow, so there are times when for, I don't know, a kilometer or so, the cars cannot really pass me, because I have to take the full lane because of the bumpiness of the road, particularly on the right side. And there is oncoming traffic, so they have to wait, they have to be patient. And since it's a very gentle uphill, I'm not overly fast. So you see me here, I'm still doing between 30 and 35 kilometers. Well, that's too slow for many car drivers. This is now the town of Rossbach, also one of the designated places of one of our tours, where we came across another mountain, and we're continuing to take the river road upstream beyond Rossbach. If you go back to my videos from other areas, you will find one video which says Mittwochs nach Rossbach, and you will also have pictures from this section here, because in Rossbach we joined this particular track. You see here that the river winds its way through the mountains, and so does the road, which is the case in many places. But it makes it very nice to ride along those river valleys, is that you are swinging to the left and right, and with new vistas beyond every corner. So here's one of those bumpy sections where I need to take the lane, and cars cannot really pass me because the road is not clear or there's traffic coming. See the rocks to the side of the road. You see that the road actually has been created by taking part of the mountain away. Otherwise it would have been too narrow. So very few cyclists here. These were the only two guys that I saw. Pensioners with their e-assisted bikes. There could be more road biking here. But it is sort of a bit too far away from many of the urban centers where most of the road bikers come from. Here there's a castle ahead up on the mountain that I can see. It doesn't come out clearly in the video. And the interesting thing is I can see that it has an old part and a new addition to it, visible from afar. But the road now goes in a long swing around the mountain, and the river does the same to the right here. And then as we get around the mountain, we will see the same castle with its new additions from the other side. Just wait for it as we're getting around. The river is coming closer now also. It is right next to the road here. And pretty soon you will see for yourself what I told you. See there? This now is the castle from the other side. Now we're approaching the A3 bridge, in which at the same time is an intercity express bridge. You see the small one, the narrow one is the railroad bridge, 2 lanes, and the big one is the Autobahn bridge, 6 lanes. A3 and this intercity express track, they are connecting Cologne and Frankfurt, one of the busiest tracks, one of the busiest routes in the country. Approaching Neustadt now, on the climb that was just behind us, I had this truck behind me. He couldn't pass me. But now that the terrain is leveling out and is, I'm entering into a downhill even, I'm leaving the truck behind. And he didn't catch me on all the way into Neustadt. I think Neustadt is the largest town in the upper Wied Valley, and we're passing through and continuing along the river for just a bit more, a few kilometers more, before we reach the name-giving place of this video, the Ehrenstein Monastery and Castle ruin. Pretty valley again beyond Neustadt, very quiet. Not much traffic, fortunately, and there's this little chapel coming up. That's the indication. That already belongs to the monastery, and this building, I think, belongs to it as well. And I give signal to the traffic behind me that I will be turning off to the left pretty soon. And that is here. A very small, short, little side valley. And what you see ahead of me is the buildings of the old Ehrenstein Monastery. And to the left of that monastery is a castle rock with the ruins of a fortress on it. I'll show you a little bit of that. You see there's the ruins of the dungeon. An e-assisted mountain biker passing by. And I'm in a bit too high a gear for this, but that's all right. Still works. See there the view of the fortress. I think it is pretty much in decay. That's why there's a fence around it, because there's stones falling down occasionally. And there's a little road leading steeply up the mountain. I could have taken an earlier turn off from that road to go up the mountain, but that would have been one with more traffic and one not passing by the Ehrenstein Monastery, which is a rather remote, old, and scenic place. I stopped there for a banana and some water, and now continuing. I'm not up the mountain yet, but I'm almost up the first climb. You see, we're at 223 meters now. The climb will go up to 300 meters eventually, but on a different terrain. This was now climbing out of a river valley, and from now on I am in rolling hill country, which means I'm up on a plateau with very gently rolling hills. Unfortunately, in my case, the first, I think, 15 kilometers or so, the rollers tend to be more of an uphill than of a downhill, but it's nice to ride, and it has great views, because up on those plateau areas, there's of course a lot more farming, as you can see here, so there's a lot less forest. You see forests to the left and right, but there's a pretty wide area of farmland that I'm now crossing. There are a couple of villages on this plateau, and this road, of course, is connecting those villages. Here's the first one of them. See, horses been taken down the main street. And the trend is going up. You see, I'm climbing very gradually, so it's good to ride, but it's an uphill. But it doesn't matter to me. It's the views are great. Sun is shining, so I'm not complaining at all. See, this is coming out of the next village. Again, up to the village was a little climb, then out of the village, I'm climbing up to the next one. This is how it goes here. All of these villages belong to the town of Asbach, which is the next one coming up. We're not quite yet at the top of the climb. That's where this eagle, this wooden eagle is. That's the top of the climb here. And Asbach is a bit down from here. Out of Asbach, there's a downhill wading, not a big one, but one of those gentle ones. To be sure, however, before we get to the next village, there will be a climb. You see, the next village is straight ahead, up on that little hill there. So we will be going down for a few hundred meters more and then back up again. Speed is dropping because we're getting into the uphill now. I also show you a bit of the uphill so that you can't say I'm just, giving you the high-speed parts. There will be more high-speed parts, but there's also the uphill, and you have to take the uphill as easy as you do consume the downhills. What you can hear is granny gear. That's the 6136. So it's the 36 sprocket in the back that makes that noise. Okay, you see we're almost back at 300 meters. So everything you lose in between in those gentle rollers, you have to earn back. But now there's a bit of downhill terrain coming up because we're approaching the end of this area. Poor guy going uphill, I'm going downhill the other way, which is a lot of fun because the road is very good. Sections of that have been redone over the past 2 years, and it's just a joy to ride because we had to take some very bad roads to go around this section during the time of construction. So now finally we're getting out of town so I can let go of the brake and we can take full advantage of the downhill while it lasts. Which is not for very long. I'll give you this uncut. See the downhill in here, you see brand new road. There was a bridge right here, I believe, which was one of the reasons why this construction took so long. And there's already the next village on the next little hill coming up, so I'm trying to conserve as much momentum as I can for this little uphill coming up. You see a 1 to 2% uphill. Okay, this is Griesenbach now, and in Griesenbach I will turn left towards Buchholz and the Hanfbach Valley. See here in those villages, people are even brooming the streets, which never happens in the city, but out here in the countryside, people do this. As you will see in a moment, we're reapproaching the Seven Mountains. This time we're coming from the east. See those seven mountains there? We're seeing them from the other side now. Behind them is the Rhine River Valley. Pretty busy road here, but I'm turning off towards a much quieter side road, which first takes me down and then leads me into a small river valley, the Hanfbach Valley, which I will follow all the way to Hennef. Here you need to be careful to reduce speed because you're coming up a pretty steep mountain and there are two rather sharp bends that have to be taken. Switchbacks actually. And another one before the turnoff. While this road may have a little traffic, the other road has little to no traffic. Here now, this is a very scenic side road, which has also been redone just these past 2 years. And this now here, this is the new section. Very smooth, very good to ride. It's a very small road, you can see. It doesn't even have two designated lanes. So it is a kind of a 1.5 lane road with little boxes where you can meet with other traffic, where you can give way to other traffic. Very nice, very good to ride. And you see 52. It's a beautiful little stretch of road, and it ends right here. I give you some extensive footage of a few of those sections so that you get a little feel for the Hanfbach Valley. Passing through, I think, 3 or 4 villages. This is the first of them. Where speed goes down, evidently, before you get out of the village, which is all right, which is part of the joy of riding here. Once you're out, you're back to a small and pretty road with nice views to both sides. This is beyond the next village, somewhat wider road for a little while, but as quiet as the other ones and as good to ride as the other ones. Just watch the speeds on this roads and it's amazing. It's joy. It's the reward for the climbing I have done before. And again, I'll let this run for a while so that you can see for yourself what it is like to be out here. There are some little hills in between, but nothing major. It's just that your speed drops down to 35 before you go back past 40 and 50 again. You see, I told you, 50 kilometers an hour, beautiful riding. Isn't that perfect velomobile terrain? See, that was a pretty long section, uncut, a stretch of road free of any interruptions, the best terrain that I can imagine for a bike like this. And there's the next village coming up, so I'll have to reduce speed because there are a couple of sharp bends, and probably there's going to be some traffic. Okay, beyond the town, we're soon reaching Hennef, which is the largest town in the area. All the villages that I've passed through before already belong to the city of Hennef. Hennef is located on the Sieg River, and I'll pass through the city center of Hennef and then leave the road for the Sieg River Bike Trail. Right in Main Street, Hennef now. It's a pretty town. I don't know how many people, but it's one of the larger places in the area. This is the main street running through town. It has been redesigned to slow down traffic. And here we're beyond town, heading back to the Sieg River Trail, which means that you will see mostly cyclists and some pedestrians for the next 25 kilometers. And I'll show you a little bit, a few sections of the Sieg River Trail. I think I have other videos where I focus on those areas or those parts of it where you can ride speedily. I'll pick a few others today where you have to negotiate turns and some other obstacles, just to show that in order to be comfortable on those river trails, you actually need to know them. So part of the trail is on the levee, right like this one right here, which sort of fences in the Sieg River Meadows, which is reserved terrain for high water. Sieg River frequently carries high water. And on the other side of the levee, there's some farmland, and then there are the next villages. See, this is what I mean, is here you have some sharp turns. Before there were some sharp turns. Then you have a little bit of paved road. Here you have another 90-degree turn to the left. If you don't know them, you'll necessarily be slower because you don't really know what's going to be ahead. and where to be fast, where better to let go, where to just roll, and where to put in a bit of power. Of course, the trail is also more bumpy in many parts than a road would be, or at least a good road would be. But that's part of the secret of trail riding, is that you know the bumps. And you also know those little uphills like this one here, where the trail connects to another one across the motorway here. So it has to go up to meet with the other trail that comes across the bridge. And you'll be slower, some pedestrians, but down the other side you pick up your speed again. And if you know that this is coming up, then you prepare best to take it. Same here. The trail runs through some open land, but at the bridge that is coming up in the distance, there will be 2 sharp turns and then a short little uphill that you need to be prepared for in order to take them in the best possible way. And you see there was also a pothole right on the left side of that turn. So here's the little uphill, actually a little ramp because the trail is elevated, because the area to the right is all flooding area. Will be flooded once the river is about 1 or 2 meters higher. Here's a construction site to be negotiated. There's a railroad bridge that is being rebuilt. It will take a while. This construction is there now for a year, I believe, and it's going to be another year until it is completed. But of course, in between, these trails are very good to ride, and I like it a lot. I prefer it to the road, which is very busy, and you have sometimes mandatory bike trails on the side. I think this is twice the distance compared to the road, but I still prefer to go twice the distance on that trail than to take the road. We've just went along an underpass of the Autobahn. That was the Cologne-Bonn Autobahn, and back to the river trail. This section is to show, you see there is a sharp 90-degree turn to the left, which pretty soon is followed by a sharp 90-degree turn to the right. Again, something that you should have taken before in order to choose the proper gear and speed for that turn. I'm not saying that I'm taking those turns at the maximum possible speed. That's not my intention. And here we're back up the levee, the Sieg River levee, to the one side there is flooding area, and the other side is farmland, which would otherwise also be flooding area if it wasn't protected by the dam. And this already is the last section of the Sieg River Trail, because that dam ends at this road, which takes me under the Autobahn again, and to an intersection which is already the margins of the city of Bonn. Okay, I'm lucky. There's a green light for the cyclists here, and the other green light will come soon. This now is already the levee of the River Rhine. See, to the right is the river, and then there's flooding area, and there's buildings, villages to the other side of the dam. Across Beuel, that's a part of Bonn, on the other side of the river, I'm entering the Central Bridge, which is the middle of the three bridges of Bonn, which will take me across the river to the other side where I live, which is the left side, the western side of the river. See there's the Rhine, and downtown Bonn is just opposite on the other side. So here we're riding my usual home stretch along the river, upstream again, but this time on the left side of the river. And in the distance you see the Seven Mountains, the focal point of so many of my rides, while I'm taking the last uphill towards home. Thanking you all very much. If you have made it this far into the video, which I think most of you won't, but if you did, and if you want to come back another time, you'll be most welcome. Until then, take care and bye-bye.